G'day, I'm Warwick Schiller and welcome back to the Principles of Training. In this episode we take another look at the principle that I call do the opposite. So I mentioned before there's the mental side of training and the physical side of training, and it doesn't matter which one of those you're working on. If it's the mental side, you're going to do the opposite of where your horse is mentally. Also the physical side, you're also going to do the opposite of what your horse is doing physically. Now this is a young horse of mine that I've been working with for a little while, and his MO, his natural thing, he's a bit worried and he's a bit jittery about a lot of things, and so he's a bit standoffish. So what I had been doing a lot with him is allowing him to come up here, and I've been rubbing on him a lot. You know, a lot of times when I'm working with I get to work with a lot of pushy horses at clinics, and the first thing I want to do with them is have them get off of me because they want to be on top of me, sort of thing. It's not that I want them off of me, I want to have that balance. I want to have to where I could bring them close, I could send them away, I could do either very easily. And this horse has always been quite standoffish and a little worried about things, so I have been allowing him to come up here a lot more. But it's getting to the point now to where it's almost like the lady I mentioned before, whose horse was crazy for a year and a half, and then she spent 6 months getting it quiet. That one transition doesn't help. So I think I've spent enough time getting him to where he's quite comfortable being near me and not worried about stuff. So I'm probably going to start working on, every time he comes up here too close, I'm probably going to send him off. Now, I'm going to send him off away from me. So there's two things I'm going to work on here. If he comes too close to me, I'm going to send him off too far away. But which direction I choose to send him off on will be the opposite of the direction he was pointing in. So I'm just going to step over here, and he approaches me on this side, so I can see all of his left side. So he's thinking about coming too close to me on this side. So when I correct that, I would send him off away from me on that side. If he wants to come back in again, I'm going to send him away from me again, but I'm not going to hold him out there. Remember I said before about there's that balance point in the middle, and you can see he wants to come in here too close. Okay, so there's a place in between out there and in here I want him to try to find. So when he comes in too close, I'm going to send him off out there, and then he wants to come back in here. When he comes in here, I'll immediately send him back out there, and he goes out there, and he's still out there, and he's still out there, and he's still out there. So I'm just going to ask him to stop there. And when he stops, does he stay out there? Does he come in here? When he comes in here, I'm going to send him off the other way. Now the reason I send him off the other way, because he came in on this side of me. Now he comes back in, I'm going to send him back out there again. And so what I do with him is dictated by him. He wants to stop, I'm going to have him go. That's the opposite. I didn't ask him to stop. So if he wants to stop, I want him to go. So right there, he's just cruising around there. That's about where I'd like him to be. He's not in here, he's not out there. He's not trying to stop, he's not trying to run off, he's kind of in the middle of everything. So I'm just going to ask him to stop right there. Now does he stop and stay out there, or does he walk in here? See, that time he stopped out there and he licked his lips a little bit. Every other time right there he walked in here. Now he walks in too close and his head's pointing that way, so I'm going to send him off over that way. So just what he does, so he comes in here, I'm going to send him off out there. So what he does is, what I do to him is dictated by what he tells me he needs to do. If he was going around here and he started cantering and running around real fast, going this way, I'd have him turn and go the other way. If he wants to stop too much, I'm going to have him go too much. But it's not up to me to tell him what I want him to do. I always tell people that doing groundwork, the first thing I'm going to do in the groundwork is give the horse what they need. It's not about me getting what I want, it's about supplying them with what they need. And what they really need is the opposite of where they're at. He wants to stop and come in here. I'm going to send him back off out there again. Now when he wants to stop and come in here, I'm going to send him off out there again. He wants to stop and come in here, I'm going to send him off out there again. Now you might notice I'm letting him make that mistake, and that's another principle we'll get to in another episode, allowing him to make a mistake, but that's a huge part of training too. So now he doesn't appear to want to stop. Just going to ask him to stop right there, and I'm going to see what he does now. So now he looks more mentally balanced than he was before. Oh, he had a big sigh, did you hear that? He's more mentally balanced than he was before. He's not in here, he's not out there, he's right in that spot in the middle right there. So, you know, doing this groundwork stuff, like I said, for me, the horse dictates what I need to do next. If he came in, like I said, if he came in here and came too close, I'd send him off, but I would choose which side to send him off to, depending on which side he presented himself to. If he walked straight up to me, I could probably choose either one. But if he tells me there's an obvious side he'd like me to be on, I'm going to have him go the opposite way. What a good little man you are. So I talked a little before about what dressage trainers do, or really anybody who teaches a horse how to collect well. It's a whole series of transitions, and what dictates to you what transition to make next would be how they did the transition before. If you were doing walk to walk transitions, and when you went from a walk to a trot, if your horse hit a trot that looked like your average Western pleasure horse trot, you wouldn't then come back down to a walk. Boom, you'd shoot him up into a bigger trot to get more forward. If you were going from a trot to a walk, and when you hit the walk, the horse was almost going off into a trot, you wouldn't go back into a trot, you'd probably go into a stop, back up transition, and then go back forward from there. You're really just trying to get that balance point in the middle. I'll show you a little bit here with Bundy. Now, I'm no dressage trainer, but I'll show you a little bit here with Bundy. So I'm going to do some walk to trot transitions here. So I'm going to go from walk to a trot. Now when I'm trotting, I'm going to come back to a walk, and right as he comes back to a walk, I am going to carefully monitor or carefully analyze the quality of his walk. When he comes back to that, from that trot to that walk, I'm thinking, okay, is he more on the upper side of the walk? So is his walk too big? In which case I probably need to stop and back up. Or is he on the lower side of the walk, which means his walk's too lazy and I have to kick him back up to a trot. So I'm just gonna trot over here. So I'm trotting, I'm gonna come back to a walk, and right there he's a bit slow, so I'm gonna go straight back up to a trot. Okay, I'm gonna come back to a walk, and right there, see, he's still trotting, so what am I gonna do? I'm gonna stop and back up, and see how really engaged I've done this quite a bit with him, as you can tell, but see how really engaged his hind end is, and then I'm gonna go back up to a walk. Then I'm gonna go from a walk to a trot. Now I'm going to go from a trot to a walk and see, and go back to a trot again. I just want to look at that downward transition and see what I need to do next. I'm going to come back to a walk, and right there he's still trotting, he's not thinking about walking, so I'm going to back him up a little bit. And see how his front end's very elevated and his hind end's very low? That's what I'm talking about. See how close his front and back feet are? I'm just going to go back to a walk, maybe up to a trot. Back to a walk. Now he's right there. He was thinking he was going to go forward again. I've had to do a lot of come to a walk shooting forward because this horse would like to be a little bit lazy. Okay, he'd like to do as little as possible, and so I've done a lot of trot to walk to shooting back up to a trot transitions, and now I'm starting to, remember I said before, our vices are in excess of our virtues. I've got him nice and forward now, but now when he does the downward transition to a walk, sometimes he's thinking about trotting again a bit too much. So I might do some downward transitions to a walk, stop, back up. And I might pause a split second here so he's not anticipating going again, which will be another whole episode of anticipation, your best friend or your worst enemy, but we'll get to that principle later on. So now I'm going to go back up to a walk, to a trot. I'm going to go from a trot to, I might go from a trot to a walk to a stop to a back. See right there, he raises up and he kind of starts running through my hands just a little bit because he's thinking the next thing we're going to do is go into another trot. So I better get him thinking when I'm going to go from a trot to a walk to a stop to a back. I want him to think about doing that every single time now, because he's balanced a little bit on the upper side. I'm going to pick up here. Now that time he wasn't thinking about that, but did you see him bend his hocks as he slows down? He's getting those hocks ready to either go backwards or push forward, or go backwards or push forward. That's that balancing point you're trying to get in the middle right there. Okay, so I'm just going to trot along here, come back to a walk, back up to a trot. And you're really trying to get them to where they are finely balanced between, there we go, that was great downward transition. He was trotting, he sunk his hocks, slowed down to walk. That was great, but that's what you're really trying to do, is get that balance there. So that would be what you would call longitudinal balance, front to back balance. Okay, there's that balance, but then there's latitudinal balance, side to side balance. And so now I'll show you some examples of different disciplines doing different things and how that side to side balance can really help. So now I'm going to show you with a hunter jumper how the principle of do the opposite can come into play when they're trying to prevent a horse from diving around a corner. So a lot of times, or almost every time in a jumping course, when you do a diagonal line like this, the next turn is going to be off to the left like that, isn't it?
Yes.
And they'll get to anticipating going around that corner, won't they?
Yes.
So to use the principle of do the opposite, when they make that, if they anticipate that corner, what you could do is you could come through here and turn right there, which will never happen in a competition, is that correct? Right. You're always going to go left there. And so you could turn right and then you would just come back and do it again. And in this case, I think we're going to turn right again, and then the next time she's going to go left. But what you probably, for me, if you're a really good rider, I imagine when they land, you could tell if they're thinking straight or if they're leaning one way, and you would just go the opposite. So here we just go here, and once again, we're going to go back the other way. See how much better that horse stood that shoulder up going around that corner than the first time. The first time he just dove around the corner. So there you go. That's just another version of do the opposite of whatever your horse is doing to keep them right there in the middle. Probably the most beneficial thing about this whole do the opposite principle is it really gets those horses where they hold themselves in the middle. They balance themselves in the middle. I do an exercise when I'm riding green horses that I call the left-right exercise, and I've seen different trainers do it over the years and talk about it, and so I didn't invent this exercise by any means, because it's a principle that's as old as time. But what I do in young horses when I first start riding them around, I don't steer them. I don't steer them where I want them to go. They're the ones who dictate what I have to do. So I don't steer them. And let's say I'm I usually do this at the trot. Let's say I'm trotting along here and my horse, the reins are loose, my horse drifts off to the left, like drops his shoulder and ducks off over here. I'm just going to pick up my right rein and steer him the opposite direction. And right about there, he would have had to pick his shoulders up to make that corner. And then now I'm heading across over here and he's trotting along, and then if he gets distracted and leaves my line and steers over here, I'm going to pick up and steer him back off over here. And it's just an overcorrection in the opposite direction, and that exercise really does a lot for your horse as far as his mental focusing abilities, because after a while they really get to where their ears go backwards and forwards, like, hey, where are we going? What are we doing? And a lot of times horses drop their shoulder, for instance, because they think they know where they're going. And a lot of times people allow horses to just go around. They see the fence coming and the horse assumes it's going to go somewhere. So if you were trotting down here, your horse would probably start dropping its shoulder now because it thinks it's going to go around the corner. Well, right here I would steer this way, and oh, right there my horse had to pick his shoulder up to make that turn. If he was heading off this way, I could just pick up and steer over here, and oh, hang on, I got to get myself organized to make that turn. And those horses really get in a state of readiness. So it helps the mental side of things because they get to where they're prepared to go one way or the other, but it helps with the physical side of things too, because they're prepared to go one way or the other. They're not just on their front end, they are rocked back. But it's not just me who does this. I think I mentioned in the previous episode about Charlotte Dujardin. So Charlotte is probably the most prolific dressage rider in the world at the moment. She's won the gold medal at the last 2 Olympics, the last World Equestrian Games, the last European Championships, and the last Dressage World Championships. And her coach and mentor is a man named Carl Hester. So the horse that she won all those gold medals on, his name's Vallegro. Carl, I think, owns half that horse, and Carl is the trainer of that horse, and he coaches Charlotte and Vallegro. And at not the last Olympics, but the one before, I believe Charlotte won the gold medal in the individual, and Carl was 3rd, and he won the bronze medal. And I'm not sure there has ever been a horse trainer at the in the equestrian events at the Olympics who had trained 2 horses to medals in the same year. I'm pretty sure I'd have to be verified, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. But what Carl Hester does with horses that drop their shoulder around the corner, the common thing people tend to do when you ride into a corner and the horse wants to drop its shoulder around the corner is they want to hold that shoulder up and continue around the corner, but you're basically not making a transition to the other side. That horse is why is he dropping his shoulder? He's thinking, I'm going to go around that corner, and then you kind of say, no you're not, no you're not, no you're not. Yes you are. You don't really get that horse to change its mind. Carl Hester does something completely different, which is along exactly the same principle as what I do with my left-right exercise. And so what Carl does, I don't have square corners in my arena, I've got 45-degree angle corners, but let's pretend the last post on this straight line here is the corner. So Carl says if I want to fix a corner, I trot down here, and as I get to the corner, I let go, and the horse starts to drop around the corner. He says I stop and I do a turn on the forehand to the outside, and I go again, and he trots all the way down this fence, and he gets all the way down to this corner, and if that horse starts to drop around the corner, he stops and he does a turn on the forehand. Oops, that's not a turn on the forehand, Bundy. Does a turn on the forehand to the outside, and he trots down there again, and he repeats it and repeats it and repeats it and repeats it. So when you trot down here, this horse gets right here, and he is not sure if he is going to go around that way or if he's going to stop, do a turn on the forehand, and go the other way. So that horse holds himself up in the middle. He's prepared to do both. And what's funny is I only just read about that last year, but what's funny is I actually do that a lot, and it's only because of the principles that I discovered that. It turns out now one of the best dressage trainers in the world does it too. But I had a lady come for a lesson many years ago, and she said, my horse runs away at the canter. Can you help me with him? And I said, sure. I said, what's he like at the walk and the trot? And she said, oh, he's perfect, the walk and the trot. And I said, okay, just go ahead and ask him to walk around the arena. And so she walked around the arena. I said, okay, go ahead and ask him to trot. So she trotted around the arena, and I said, okay, there's your problem. He is out of control at the walk and the trot. It doesn't happen at the canter, it happens at the walk and the trot. She said, he wasn't out of control, he was completely calm. And I said, your horse walked around the arena and made 4 left turns, and then you trotted around the arena and made 4 left turns. Did you ask for any of those left turns? And she said, well, no. And I said, well, he's not waiting for you. So what I want you to do, and I'll basically pretend there's an arena right here. So let's say this is the long side of the arena. I said, what I want you to do, or this is the short end, sorry. And what I want you to do is just walk along here, and so the arena would go that way. When you get to the corner, if he turns left like that, just turn right into the corner and go back over to the other corner. And when you get to the corner, if he starts to turn around the corner on his own, I want you to turn left and go back along that fence. And I want you to keep walking back and forth along there until he will walk along there and get to the corner and go, there's a fence in the way, you didn't ask me to turn, what should we do? And when she got that bit working, I said, now what I want you to do is turn into the corner. Now I want you to trot backwards and forwards across there. And so she picked up the trot and she trotted over here, and as the horse got to the corner, saw the corner coming, it started turning around the corner. So I said, turn him into the corner. And then she went over there, and as he got to that corner, he started to turn the corner on his own, and she turned the other way. And I had to go backwards and forwards until he would trot over here and go, excuse me lady, you didn't tell me what to do. So once she got that bit working, I said, good, now turn the corner and now pick up the canter. And she looked at me like, now you get to see what I mean about running away at the canter. And so she pointed him across the short side again, she picked up the canter and he went, canter, 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 canter. Saw the corner coming, canter, canter, trot, 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 walk. Shh, stop. And she looked at me and she said, he's never cantered that slow in his life. And I said, I don't think he's ever been waiting for you in his life. He's always been get in, sit down, shut up and hang on. And you didn't notice it at the walk and the trot, but you sure did notice it at the canter. And so what we did in that instance right there was to do the opposite of whatever he thought he was doing and get him waiting for her. And it solved the running away at the canter issue without even trying to solve the run away at the canter issue. So hopefully in these last 2 episodes you've got an idea of how the principle of do the opposite works and how it works for different disciplines. So be sure to join us next time and we'll look at another principle of training.